Alright, welcome back to Flatiron Tuning. We're here in the shop. I'm sitting on our sim rig, and today we're going to talk sequential transmissions. Now the first question is, why would you put a sequential in your car in the first place? To a large extent the answer is kind of obvious. I mean, you want this. You want the video game feel. You want to be able to make gear selection, let's call it instant, easy, make it, basically take as much of the job of shifting gears away from the driver so they can focus on the steering input, on their braking input, just driving the car, not have to worry about pushing in the clutch, lifting off on the gas, working through an H pattern, what gear am I in, all that sort of thing. It makes gear selection way more automatic. So that's a big advantage, and that there can be speed had just in doing that alone, just letting the driver focus on driving the car. In Subaru especially, but in a lot of turbocharged cars, there's another benefit, which is flat foot shifting. What that means is that you're driving, your foot's on the gas, the engine's at full chat, you're driving up the road, and you have to shift gears. Well, you stay on the gas, you just pull the shifter, you shift the gear, you hit the sequential, and it just goes into the next gear. You don't have to lift off on the gas, push in the clutch, any of that. That keeps the engine basically in the state where it's making its max power, and then you're back right to max power almost instantly with the sequential. And that's a huge advantage. It makes it so that you're losing much less time every time you shift a gear. And again, think about how many times you'd shift a gear around a normal track. Let's think to Pikes Peak, where you got 156 corners, a lot of super tight stuff, a lot of wide open stuff. You're shifting a lot. So if you can save a tenth, 2/10 of a second, or preserve that momentum, to gain a tenth or 2/10 of a second per turn over 156 corners, that ends up to be a lot of time. So there's a lot. That's the biggest motivation for us to put the sequential in the cars. We should be able to pick up a lot of time with this. It should make the car a lot faster without adding any power. It's just we're being more efficient in the drivetrain. So what is so different between a synchronized gear set and a dog box or a sequential gear set? Well, the name is right in the title there. It's the synchros. This is a first gear from a Subaru 5-speed, and you have your hub and slider. This is where your shift fork rides, and it basically goes back and forth. Moves back and forth so you can select the gear. And in between the hub and slider and your gear, you have this brass piece, which is your synchro. And the best way to think of a synchro is as a brake. So when you're not engaged, basically the two shafts of the transmission are spinning at whatever speed of the gear that you selected is, let's say first gear. And then when you want to go into second gear, you push in the clutch, you take off the load on the transmission, and then you move your shifter from first into second gear. And as that happens, the hub and slider moves and it applies pressure to the synchro. The best way to think of the synchro is as a brake. What it's doing is it's matching the two shafts of the transmission to the speed of the new gear that you're trying to engage. Once they match, it just drops right in, and that's what locks the transmission into that gear. Then you let out the clutch, you apply load, and then now you're in second gear. With a dog box or a sequential, well, all of that stuff is missing. So the question is, well, how is it able to engage a gear so quickly? Well, the answer is they got rid of most of the material that you have here in a synchronized dog box to facilitate the quick change. This is the selector for the dog box. That's it. It's just this little ring with a couple little teeth on it to grab the next gear. The way that they're able to get the gear to change so fast is you're not going to use a synchro as a brake to get both shafts up to speed. You basically just pull it out of gear, and then you put it into the next gear, and it's so open that just those few teeth are able to just drop right in, even though the two gears are spinning at different speeds. Once that gear comes around and grabs the teeth, bam, you're locked into the next gear. You've just shifted gears. That's how it can do it so quickly. But it's a much harsher engagement compared to taking the load off, using the synchro as a brake to bring the two shafts up to speed, and then getting it to just drop into gear nicely. That's why over the use of a sequential or dog box transmission, more wear can occur more quickly compared to a synchronized transmission. In part because you're not utilizing the clutch to shift the gears, but also in part because that engagement of the gear is so immediate and so quick, and it's not done in a gradual process. So this is where we landed. This is a Modena Sequential gear set that is going into our Pikes Peak race car. How do we pick Modena? Well, it came down to three things: Gobstopper 1, Gobstopper 2, and Travis Pastrana. Now Modena, they're based in Australia. They've been making gear sets, dog boxes and such for Subarus for a long, long time. They were actually one of the very first companies to make a sequential for the STI transmission, in fact. Gobstopper 1 was running a Modena dog box. It wasn't a sequential, but Roger Clark Motorsports figured out a way to make a custom shifter to turn it into a sequential. Then Gobstopper 2 got one of the first Modena sequentials, like the full kit, sequential kit from them. And talking to the guys at Roger Clark, it worked really well, was reliable, they'd strongly recommend it. Travis Pastrana. Well, actually it's more Vermont sports car than Travis Pastrana specifically, but when Subaru Rally Team USA decided to go with sequentials into their cars, they picked Modena because Modena had a really, really good reputation for making motorsports grade kits. Sequentials, people in Europe have been running the Modena Sequential in their rally cars for a long time with great success, so that's what Subaru Rally Team USA used. So rumor is they bought 15 or 20 of these, and for a long time, if you saw Subaru running a sequential, it was a Modena Sequential in the Subaru Rally car. Travis Pastrana, the first record that he set up Mount Washington in the Subaru Rally car, that was using a Modena Sequential. Not the one, not Air Slayer, that was something else, but the first time he did it, again, Modena Sequential. They have just a great reputation for making motorsports grade gears. Their sequentials are probably viewed as some of the best out there. They make a lot of Porsche racing gears in differentials, and they have a ton of success. Better known here in the States as guard transmission or GT gears, but they have just tons and tons of success. They've got the pedigree, and from everybody that I talked to, even the guys at Vermont Sports Car, they're like, yeah, this is probably your best bet unless you were going to go with a Sedev, which is like, add an extra zero to the cost of this to make that jump. So that's how we landed here. So now we're going to pack all this up, send it off to the experts at Rally Spec. Fortunately, Dave at Rally Spec is going to work with us and get this installed in our STI transmission, send it back, and then we can work on figuring out the tuning with the new standalone, the new Haltech Nexus, and hopefully that gets us where we want to be. I mean, yes, we could put this in without tuning for it. You can use a sequential that way, but you have to be really careful and diligent with how you shift the car, because you're just on that razor's edge of creating a failure. Just by missing a shift, not lifting off of the throttle to shift the car and so forth. So reliability is key. We want to keep this transmission, this drivetrain reliable. So that's where we're going to try and do it right the first time and figure out the whole flat foot shifting and tuning and all that sort of stuff. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a little bit, but that'll be the next installment in this for this chapter, as it were. So thanks so much for your support. Hopefully you like these videos. Hopefully they're helpful. The best way to support us to make sure that we can keep coming back and making this content for you is to head over to flatirons.tuning.com. And until next time, thanks so much for your support as always, and stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning.